Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Relationships. Engagements are a very happy time for the couple. However, sometimes some family members might disagree. Today we have two stories that talk about this. But before we begin, don't forget about Lost Genre AITA Daily, a channel dedicated exclusively to Am I the A-hole? Now let's get started with the first story. This one's from Throwaway She's Settling. My fiance's sister, 28 female, told me she's in love with me, 27 male, and my fiance, 28 female, is just settling for me. My fiancée Nancy and I are getting married in December. We've been going through a small rough patch since late June. I felt like everything was okay, but we were just out of sync. We've been together for 2 years and this has happened before and we just come out of it usually. I have a very good relationship with my fiance's twin sister, Peggy. We hung out a lot before she introduced me to her sister, so I've known her longer and she's one of my best friends and is probably the person that knows me the best other than my family and Nancy. She and her sister also have a great relationship. No resentment, no anger towards each other, just sisterly love. Saturday, I received a string of messages from Peggy that were telling me not to marry Nancy. She told me she didn't love me like she should, and if we got married, we'd be in a loveless, intimateless marriage. I told her I didn't believe her. She sent me screenshots of messages between her and Nancy. I wish I hadn't read them. She said that I wasn't the love of her life, that I wasn't her soulmate, that I was just a good option and would be a good provider and great dad to her kids, that I was a nice guy that any girl would be lucky to have, but he's not the one for me. I asked Peggy why she told me all of this and she said she's my best friend and she loves me. She said she's wanted me forever but couldn't come between me and her sister like that. She said she'd love me like a wife should, that she fantasizes about being with me intimately and that I drive her crazy. She asked me to leave Nancy and come be with her. I'm so confused. I don't know what to do about anything. I feel like my life had been turned completely upside down. I don't know where to go from here. Whoa, what do you guys think OP should do at this point? It's not an easy situation at all. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through a few of the community comments to see the advice they give him, and then we have an update to see what OP did. Cranberry says, if you believe that your fiancé might feel this way, that she wasn't just venting dramatically, or that Peggy is nuts enough to fake the messages, then it's a red flag big enough to block the wedding aisle. However, you still owe it to your fiancé to discuss what's going on before ending things, so at least you know what's going on. Maybe her story is totally different, and most importantly, don't get into a relationship with Peggy without a year or two to cool down away from all of them and maybe find someone better for you who's not part of this messy family dynamic. To this, Uncanny Valley adds, I have to agree. Even if the worst happens, you learn that these messages are true and it wasn't some weird lockdown venting but how your fiancé truly feels. Do not date her sister. Peggy has red flag written all over her. Why is she telling you this now? Why did she even set you up with her sister if she loved you? Does she only want you now because her sister has you? What do you think their parents and extended family are going to think if you go from one sister to the next? Then Throwaway AITA 7891 says, you realize she could have faked the messages. It's not hard to change a name on a phone. Then Fokomojo says, are you sure you're not just being tested by them? That would be pretty messed up, I know, but have you considered this? And finally, Desert Fairy says, at this point, cut Peggy out of the equation. She is biased and has motive to lie. Focus on Nancy. Talk to her. Confront her with her own words, but maybe not the texts. If she asks you where you heard this, then show her the texts. Right now, you have a relationship and a plan to marry Nancy. That outweighs the love confession of someone you friend-zoned years ago. If Nancy doesn't love you 100%, then don't get married. Either delay or cancel the wedding depending on what you decide to do with your relationship. If you decide to end the relationship, walk away from that entire family. You don't marry a person, you don't marry their whole family. And unless you want to be the a-hole who dumps one sister at the altar to hook up with the other sister, just go no contact with both sisters. And you need to explain that to Peggy. Even if things don't work out with Nancy, you won't be dating her. That option shouldn't even be on the table. Well, that's actually some really good advice. It's all very level-headed and very safe. So now, we move on to the update. I didn't intend for my last post to get as much attention as it did. Some people have been messaging for an update, so I guess I'll oblige. So, it turns out the texts were fake, as most people suspected. Before I spoke to my fiancée, Nancy, I was going to let her sister Peggy know that I was going to tell Nancy everything she had informed me of. Peggy then said that I shouldn't do that I should just pack up and leave, that I shouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much she hurt me. This made me very suspicious, and I told Peggy I was still going to tell Nancy. Peggy then begged me over the phone to not tell Nancy and to just come be with her. I asked her why she didn't want me to tell. She eventually admitted that the texts were fake. I was genuinely shocked that Peggy could do such a thing. She was willing to blow up my relationship and make me look like I was the bad guy. I told her she was crazy and I for sure was telling Nancy all of this. She cried for me not to and began bargaining. I really don't want to be the one that has to destroy the relationship between two sisters, so I heard her out. Peggy said that if I didn't tell her that she'd leave me alone and wouldn't bother me or Nancy like this ever again. I told her I thought Nancy should know. I said that if I don't tell Nancy, then she needs to be the one to do it. Peggy tried to get out of it, but I held my demands. She begrudgingly agreed. She has till the end of the month to confess. I'm going to do my best to help Nancy repair their relationship because they've been together since the womb and I don't want them to hate each other if they don't have to. Thanks for all y'all's advice. And there you go. The texts were all fake. The good thing is, OP and Nancy can still get married without a problem. The bad thing is, the relationship probably with Peggy is ruined for both of them, cause OP kinda lost his best friend, and maybe Nancy's gonna lose her sister if she can't trust her anymore, but that's something they're gonna have to work out. At least, we know what happened. Alright, now let's move on to the next story. This one's from user Les Wolf Vet. This is an adaptation from two different posts from this user that I compounded into one story. Now let's get started. Backstory. At the time this happened, I was just 32. I am an army vet and was shot 7 months earlier and was still recovering. My girlfriend, Katie, was also in the army, came home from deployment and we decided to finally come out to our parents as lesbian, and we did. Our parents were very accepting, thankfully. My mom is from a very Christian family who were openly racist, homophobic, sexist, classist, and probably many other things I'm forgetting. Mom was the youngest child and was picked on a lot by her family. It only got worse once I and my older sister came into existence. Now, I am a ginger. I was always roughhousing with the boys in primary school and nursery and have never worn a dress. They liked girls to be delicate, pretty, stay-at-home moms at 20 and have kids. Think of their disgust and outrage when I spent 5 years in cadets, earned my black belt in Taekwondo, and joined the army the week before my 18th birthday. So they already hated me, and since I didn't give a flip, still don't, family dinners usually ended in stern looks from my parents to shut up. When this happened, Katie was still in the army and had received new deployment orders not long before. She was due to leave in 2 weeks and we were together as much as possible because we knew how much we would miss each other. Now, on to this story. Mom had not much of a choice and had to host a family dinner at our family home. We are, fairly well off and had a larger dining room than my grandparents, who were the only others who lived in Glasgow like us. I was living at home then, since my parents didn't want me on my own whilst I was recovering, and Katie and I were looking for a place for ourselves around the time this went down. So Katie and I were talking in my room when they arrived. We had dinner. Mom and Dad were forced to listen to my aunt's political views and frankly screwed up opinions. My sister, Amy, Katie, My cousin, aunt's daughter, and I were talking ourselves at the other end of the table and ignoring them. My cousin wasn't bigoted or homophobic or anything, and we trusted her, so Katie and I told her of our engagement. We were mainly talking about the army. My aunt thought Katie was just a friend staying with us. Now, I committed a mortal sin in front of her. I had a beer. Another thing, she believed girls shouldn't drink. Now, Amy had a glass of wine, but my aunt said that wasn't as bad because Amy was a proper lady. Anyone who's argued with my sister knows she isn't, but never mind. My aunt asks me what I was doing and I tell her that I was having a beer. She then tells me that I can't have that, and when I ask why, she replies that I shouldn't be drinking and turns to my dad and says, "Control your sinning daughter." My dad simply replied that I'm 32 and can have a bloody beer. She then turns to me and says, "No man will marry a girl like you." I was wearing my engagement ring and had a smug look on my face as I held it towards her and said, "What was that, auntie?" She spluttered a little and then asked where he was and if my parents have met him. I responded that they had, and she cuts me off asking if I'd kissed him yet, and I reply affirmatively. She then screams, "You floozy, stay away from your cousin, you'll corrupt her." My cousin was 28 and I knew for a fact she had slept with her boyfriend. I lost my cool. I probably would have hit her, but Katie jumped up to hold me back. My dad was very angry too. Katie and I cooled off in my room for a bit before going back to the living room and talked with my cousin and Amy. My cousin apologized for about 5 minutes straight. This time both Katie and I were having a beer. She was sitting beside me on the sofa. Then my aunt comes back and sees me with my beer and snatched it from me saying, "How could you still be drinking when I told you not to?" And I responded that I don't have to listen to her. Then she asks me if my stupid fiancé knew I was drinking and if I had his permission. I of course responded yes, and she dared me to call him. Katie excused herself and I saw her look. I knew what to do then. I take my phone out and flip through recent call log to find Katie's number. As soon as she saw the number named Sweetheart, she snatched my phone and called the number. Katie whispered something to Amy and she nearly burst out laughing. Katie picked up from across the room. Her phone wasn't silent, so we didn't hear it ring. The second it connected, my stupid aunt started on a rant about how floozily I had been acting and how drunk I was. I was on my second beer and completely sober. Katie was laughing and my aunt ended with a question. "Do you allow her to act so floozily and drink all the time? She'll corrupt my daughter." And Katie replied, "I don't have to let my fiancé drink. She does what she wants." The realization suddenly dawned on her. Her mouth opened like a fish, gaping at us. Amy was in hysterics since I don't give a flip. I patted the space beside me on the sofa looking at Katie and said, "Come on, honey. We've only got 2 weeks until you leave me." Katie grinned, walked over to lie beside me on the sofa as my aunt was still gasping. She yelled something about corrupting her daughter, threw my phone on the ground, and ran to my parents and yelled at them for having such sinful daughters and supporting the work of Satan. Well, that was the engagement. How do you guys feel about the aunt so far? I think she's an idiot, but that's just my opinion. Now, let's move on to the wedding and see what the aunt is up to. I, 32 female, and my fiancée Katie, 31 female, aren't religious, so we had our wedding at my parents' home in their garden. There was around 50 guests. I was in uniform, we are both army vets, and Katie had a beautiful dress. Everything was perfect until my stupid aunt objected to the wedding. She wasn't invited, but found the invite we had sent to her daughters because they were actually good people and decided she should come along. Now, about my aunt. She is racist, homophobic, sexist, probably a lot more I'm forgetting, and she hates me. She has since I was a kid. She calls me a devil child, claims the army gave me the gay, and that I'm a sinner who will go to hell. I've been atheist since I was 11, and she hates me for that too. So, the stupid woman decided to turn up to my wedding in white. Not just that, it was clearly a wedding dress. Then she objects to it and says there is no such thing as gay marriage. My mother and Katie's mom yelled at her until she left. But afterwards at the reception, when I was talking to my sister and our cousin, we saw her again, sulking on the side of the garden. Our cousin was apologizing so much I felt sorry for her. Then my aunt storms over. She was mad at something. Again, she approaches me and says, "You effing floozy! You don't deserve to be alive!" She actually said that. I tell her to get the hell out of my wedding because she wasn't invited. Her reply was that since I invited her daughters, then I invited her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Katie walked over and hugged me to calm me down. She was holding my arm when my aunt went off on poor Katie. She said to Katie, "You're an effing floozy too! I saw you with the best man!" Katie did hug the best man. The best man was her younger brother. I was ready to punch her, but I didn't. I let my mother handle it. She's a spitfire when she wants to be. Before she left though, my sister Amy accidentally spilt red wine all down her white dress. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. We're still married, and our cousin sent us a photo of my 60-something-year-old aunt bawling her eyes out with a wine-stained dress. Oh, OP, you know what? They shouldn't have held you down. You should have punched that woman so hard on the face she would have never come up to you again. What an idiot. You're entitled to have your beliefs and your opinions, but when they become rude to other people, then you just gotta keep them to yourself, man. And so we've reached the end of the video. I truly hope you guys liked it. If you did, just go ahead and click like, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out my new channel, the link's in the description. And finally, go ahead and visit the Lost Genre subreddit where you can share your own stories or cross-post stories from other subs. And having said all of that, I will see you guys in the next video.